early morning, can't control it. Fired up and counting every minute. Hands are shaking, eyes are burning. The time has come, yeah, this is not a warning. The week was just so long, we had to let it go. Our problems disappeared, we're not tied up anymore. The weekend is here. Sunday calls, we are sick and tired of it. Up and down, can you feel it?
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Kurt Johansson Show. It's Kurt, and today I am joined by one of the, I've got to say, hottest talents in the UK at this moment in time. We have the former SWA X-Champion, former ICW Zero-G Champion, and the current PCW Cruiserweight Champion, Leyton Buzzard. Leyton, thank you for joining.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on the show, mate. I'm really looking forward to it. I appreciate the call. I'm looking forward to having a chat today.
Yeah, really excited. This interview kind of stemmed from my chat with Dave Bradshaw and James R. Kennedy, where James just sang your praises and was just saying how good you were, and you'd been interacting. I was like, hey, fancy talking about that? So, whilst we're on it, anyways, what was your thoughts on like James pinpointing you as somebody he'd love to see in Wrestle Carnival and that you're somebody everybody should be paying attention to?
It was definitely a nice surprise. Especially with everything that's been going on with lockdown and stuff. It's been a long time since I've wrestled or done anything. So when you see your name pop up on Twitter for something like that, it was a really nice feeling to know that people are still thinking about me and I've still got supporters out there. And Jamie especially, he's been a big supporter of mine since day one. I still remember the first time. I think we might have met before, but the first time he called a match for me, it was actually his first show back with ICW. It was called France 98, the show was. Or France 99, I think it was the year after. And it was a cracking show. And we were the opener. So I was on first, and Jamie called the match. And he came up to me after and, said, well done. And he said, it's great to be back at ICW, and he loved the match. And he's been a big supporter of mine since then. So it was a really nice surprise to see my name pop up. And like I said, it was just, a nice feeling to know that people are still thinking of me and that, people haven't forgot about me.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, like, as everybody will be able to tell, English accent, but you've come up through the Scottish wrestling scene. So when did you start training? Why did you start training? And how did you get to Scotland?
Yeah, well, so I started training in April of 2016, so 4 years ago now. Specifically, I'm from Bristol originally, born and raised. I actually became a fan of ICW, the product, through watching like the Insane Fight Club documentaries and the British Wrestler and stuff like that. So I was already a massive fan of WWE, but that was what really got me into like British independent wrestling. Or Scottish independent wrestling. I don't want the Scottish people to get mad at me. So I seen that and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I was a big fan of old ECW as well. So I remember watching this and thinking, I've not seen any wrestling like this, especially as an alternative to what the product WWE was doing, very family friendly. Yeah. So as someone who was growing up a bit, 17, 18, I saw this and I was like, wow, this is cool. This is something I want to be a part of. And I heard about, I went to a show, NXT TakeOver London. I went to watch that live, and it was actually my first time watching a live wrestling show. And I remember sitting in the crowd and watching the entrance, Finn Balor's entrance, and just thinking, wow, like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. This is what I want to focus my whole time on. So after that, I remember literally that night I went back on my laptop and I was searching wrestling schools, where could I go? And then it popped up. I think it was an advert on demand, actually. I was watching some ICW. It was an advert on demand for Glasgow Pro Wrestling Asylum. And it was being advertised as the official school for ICW. So I was like, right, this is where I want to go. I knew that I wanted to wrestle for ICW. And I knew that if I was going to wrestle for them, then this was the way to do it. So I applied for the induction course and I moved to Scotland like 2 months later. Wow. I'd never been there. I'd never been to Glasgow before in my life. My mum just dropped me off and said, see you later. And that was it. That was 4 years ago.
What was your family's reaction then when you're like, hey, like it's not even down the road, like Bristol's way down south. And then you're moving so far up north, you're in Glasgow. Like, what was their reaction like when you're like, right, I'm going to pursue professional wrestling, but I'm not doing it locally. I'm moving to Scotland.
Yeah, well, obviously my mum always knew I was going to be a performer of some kind. I was an actor before. Like, I was in musical theatre shows from the age of like 9 through like 17. And I went to theatre school in London for 5 years, boarding school. So I'd already lived away from home for 5 years from a young age. And then I came back home, and I'd been saying to my mum, like, that was when I moved back home, was when I really, really got back into watching wrestling. I was watching every bit of product there was. And I kept telling my mum, you know, I want to start training, and this is really what I want to do. And she'd known, because when I was a little boy, I'd always said I wanted to be a wrestler, but like it's not really like a job you think that's like a viable career option. So she'd always knew I wanted to be one. But then I kept talking about it more and more. So eventually when I told her, I don't think she was surprised, because she knew that it was something I wanted to do so bad, but definitely surprised that it was Glasgow, you know. But my mum's always believed in me. She's always been my biggest supporter. So she didn't question it. You know, when I told her that's what I wanted to do, she said, great, I'm happy for you. And, you know, she dropped me off and she took me up here and helped me move all of my stuff. So she was great with the whole situation. Apart from Glasgow gets a bit of a bad rep, you know, like when I tell family members I'm moving to Glasgow, they go, oh, Glasgow. But it's actually a lovely city.
When was that then? Like, what year would that have been?
So that would have been start of 2016, you know, January, February. I told my mum, I think, that I actually wanted to move. I was like, I'm moving to Glasgow. I've applied for this school, and if I get into this induction, then, you know, I'm going to be moving there. I mean, obviously the induction was like an 8-week program, and there was a chance they couldn't have got that. You know, there was a chance that I could have not got through the induction. They would have said, sorry, you know, you're not for us. But I mean, luckily I did, because that would have been awkward, because I'd just, you know, like paid 3 months for a flat. So, but yeah, no, all the stars aligned, and I got it in the end. So it all worked out.
Do you think your like acting background's helped you with your transition into professional wrestling?
100%, yeah, absolutely. Like, to me, wrestling is it's entertainment, it's performance, you know. So I don't really see it as I gave up acting and started wrestling. You know, I've been a performer since I was 9 years old. You know, it's what I did then, it's what I do now. It's just different mediums. So I think it really did help a lot, especially with confidence and speaking on the microphone. Two things which have helped me throughout my career. You know, things that have set me apart. Like when I started being able to speak on the microphone, and I was given the freedom to speak on the microphone, that was when I really started getting people invested in me, because I already had these skills. And like I said, the confidence, I'd been performing in front of live crowds, 2,000, 3,000 people since I was 9 years old. So to me, going out and performing, you know, wasn't scary in itself.
Yeah.
For me, it was, you know, like remembering my moves and matches, because that was all new to me. Wrestling was all new to me, you know. So I was more just worried about, you know, getting everything right and making sure that I'm going to be putting out great matches, and, you know, people aren't going to laugh at me. But in terms of like being in front of a crowd, I was comfortable with that. And like I said, speaking on a microphone, I can talk for days. So that was something acting definitely helped with me, you know, an incredible amount. If I didn't do acting before, then I wouldn't be at the level I'm at now with wrestling.
Yeah. So talk us through that experience of, you've got the 8-week program to see if you are going to get chosen to be part of that academy. What was your first insight to professional wrestling like, to be taking the bumps and the training and the physicality of it all?
Yeah, well, my first insight is, this sucks. You know, this hurts. Like, see, you know, you see these guys wrestling so effortlessly, and you think, oh, you know, it must be fine. You know, the ring must be really soft. Boy, was I wrong. Like, I remember, like, the first session we just did rolls and stuff like that, and maybe some, I think, wrist locks or something. And then the next session was when we did our first bumps. And oh my God, I remember when we took just a normal back bump, I thought I had a concussion, like, because my head was just pounding, it was just ringing. And then we ran the ropes as well. And you wake up the next day, like, anyone who's trained in wrestling will tell you, like, the first session you run the ropes and take bumps, you wake up the next day and you feel like you've been hit by a car. You've got 3 massive bruises along your back like that from where the ropes are. So definitely, like, my first thoughts of it were, you know, this isn't fucking easy. You know, this is serious. Sorry for swearing there.
No, it's fine.
This is serious stuff, was what I was thinking. I was like, this isn't going to be a walk in the park. And this is, serious stuff. That was definitely my first thought.
So was there any point in that way thinking, this isn't for me? Or did you know, despite the pain, I'm still going to push through and I'm going to make something of myself?
Well, I don't know. After that first bump, I was like, oof, that hurts a lot. But no.
Can I get a refund on my deposit?
Yeah, no, giving up was never an option for me. Like when I moved here, I made the decision in my head that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, and nothing's going to stop me. So I've always had that mindset. I don't have a backup plan. This is it for me. I know that I'm going to be a professional wrestler for the rest of my life because that's the mindset I've got. So no, giving up is never an option for me. Even if it hurt, I knew that it was the destination was going to be worth the journey. So I've always stuck it out.
So how long had you been training until you made your debut, especially in front of like a live crowd?
It was really quick actually. So I'd lived here so I started training in April of 2016, and I think my first match was in October of 2016, right at the start. Just by chance, GPWA were running a show. It was the precursor to what is now £5 Wrestling, which is the show they run all the time. And it was the first one of its kind, and I was not supposed to be on it. Another boy was, but he had to pull out for some sort of family issue. I can't remember. And they said to me like 4 days before, like, do you want to be on the show? And I was like, oh, I mean, obviously I was like, yeah. But in my head, I'm like, I'm really not that confident for this. I'm still very much learning the basics.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to pass up an opportunity like that. That's what I moved here to do. So I think, especially a lot of the time, I think getting thrown into the deep end is, really does help you. So I got some cheap tights off eBay, I think, for like 30 quid, some girls' tights that sort of looked like they could be wrestling tights. And I went out and had this match that was, I've got it on film somewhere, Yeah, I got through it, but my big spot of the match was like a crossbody off the second rope.
Yeah.
And I slipped. my big spot of the match, I slipped and face planted. I remember 18 years old. I remember I was so gutted after the match. I was like, "Oh, this is it for me." I was like, "They're never gonna book me again." Slipped off the rope. But yeah, so I think it was four or 5 months after my debut, and then I actually made my debut for ICW the week after that.
Well, it's interesting you should say that then, especially your first big match. You go for your big spot, slip, crash, burn, but you've still bounced back and become really successful. And I do a lot of series where I speak to people that, what advice would you give them to keep on moving forward?
Yeah, well, just it's not the end of the world. I know that at the time it really must feel like that, especially if this is what you've wanted to do for a long time. Like that's very much like the biggest moment in your life, is getting your first match. But just remember that that's exactly what it is. It is your first match, and no one's expecting anything crazy of you. No one's expecting you to put out an absolute masterpiece. So just remember that is just the start of what's hopefully going to be a very long journey. So and try and enjoy it as well. For most of my first matches, I found it very hard to enjoy them because I'd get such bad anxiety about delivering and not messing up. I think a lot of it stemmed from messing up in that first match, So try and enjoy it as well. But just remember, it's your first match. Hopefully, it's going to be the first of thousands. So in the long run, a couple of muck-ups don't matter, and it happens to the best, So.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned shortly after you'd made your debut for ICW, and then obviously in 2017 you was a reoccurring figure on there, and then you've been even more so 2018 and 19. So what was it like making your debut for that company? Like you mentioned, that was essentially your introduction to British wrestling, and
yeah,
that's essentially your first dream and goal in professional wrestling was to work for that company, and now here you are on a regular basis wrestling in an ICW ring.
Yeah, I mean, it really was crazy, especially because it happened so fast. In my head, I knew it was going to happen because, like I said, I've always got that mindset where if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I don't have second thoughts. I think if you have negative thoughts about stuff, then that's going to hold you back. So I knew I was going to do it, but I just didn't know so soon. So, like I said, it was literally the week after that first debut match I had. And Wolfgang, me and him would joke around in training and stuff. And he said to me, if you want, I've got a spot for you next week at ICW. And I was like, yeah, of course. And it was, I don't know if you remember, I actually came out dressed as Trent Seven. At the time, it was in the lead up to the first Hydro show.
Yeah.
And it was Wolfgang versus Trent for the ICW title. And I came out. Trent wasn't there that day, so I came out like dressed as Trent, and we did this like comedy skit, and he like gave me loads of power bombs and destroyed me. But yeah, that was my first introduction to ICW, and it was literally the week after my debut match. So that feeling to, you know, walk out the curtain in front of the ICW crowd and think, you know, this was the reason I moved to Glasgow. So for it all to happen so fast was amazing. And then throughout the next 6 months, I just did like sporadic sort of appearances, mainly just, you know, like enhancement. So just, you know, getting destroyed by people. I think I was Rampage and Ashton's first opponent when they were a team, and they just came out and destroyed me. I was when Yeston Reese did this thing called Catch of the Day, where he was just, you know, they're building up as this big strong guy, and I was one of them as well. I was the vicar at Davey and Martina's wedding. I got to go on tour as well, I remember. That was awesome. You know, like 6 months after that debut, I got to go on tour, which is crazy. And then after doing like the sporadic appearances, that was when they said to me, they sat me down and said, hey, we've got this great idea for you, and we're going to be putting you with Joe Hendry. And at the time, all I was told, that was it. They're just like, we're putting you with Joe Hendry. Like, we didn't really know anything about it. We were like, you're going to be his intern, is what they said. And that was it. That was all I got told. I was like, okay, cool. So we did that in Newcastle of 2017. I think I joined him. Yeah, Newcastle 2017 in September. And then from then on, I was on ICW every single week. I didn't miss it. I don't think I've not been on a ICW show since then.
Wow. Like, from there, you mentioned Joe Hendry, and that was kind of one of the matches that kicked off that big weekend you had in 2019 at Shug's house party, where I believe it was like your freedom of speech versus Joe's career, was it? So what was that like?
Oh, well, it was amazing. So me and Joe had this partnership for like a year and a half, nearly 2 years. And I think the fans could always tell that, you know, eventually it was going to go south. During the end of it, it started getting more and less and less fun, and Joe was being more and more sort of rude to me and dismissive of me. But we had this, it lasted for so long, and I think eventually people could tell, you know, something was going wrong. And it did. We had this, Joe turned his back on me. And I came back, and I came through the crowd. I was like wearing a Rey Mysterio mask, and I jumped the barrier, and I attacked Joe, and attacked all the rest. And it was on, you know, finally it was on. I challenged him to the match, and it was like, that was it. Boom, Leyton Buzzard, first Joe Hendry, 2 years in the making at Shug's house party. And I remember when I first saw that graphic, I couldn't believe it, because, you know, we'd been together for so long, we'd been building up for so long. And now, you know, this thing that I dreamed of happening was really happening. And I just remember that was the first moment I was like, right, it's on, is when I saw that graphic. But to me, I love, you know, everyone likes their different type of wrestling. For me, I love stories. I love telling stories in the ring, from matches like Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan versus The Rock. You know, I love stories being told in the ring, and because me and Joe literally had this 2-year storyline building up to this match, it really was a dream come true for me, and especially to have that as my first sort of, you know, I'd had matches in ICW, don't get me wrong, but this was very much my first sort of marquee match. It was my first match on like one of the larger events. So yeah, going into that weekend, I just felt it was also surreal, but also incredible as well. Joe Hendry's, you know, truly is one of the best in the country at what he does. So it was amazing to be in there with him as well.
Yeah, definitely. From your time with Joe, like, what did you learn from working so closely with Joe for that year and a half, 2 years?
Oh, well, it really was a godsend, because, like, well, I mean, when I first partnered up with Joe in 2017, I was, I think, 19 years old. I weighed maybe like, I don't know, 60 kilograms, like 9 stone. You know, I was just starting wrestling on like the GPWA shows, and I was just given this amazing opportunity to learn, you know, from Joe Hendry. And he's such a great guy, you know, in the ring and behind the curtain as well. He's a really good guy. So to learn from him, to get to watch him, I was ringside for every one of his matches. So all these big matches he was having, these big singles matches, I was getting to be ringside, and I was getting to watch everything and watch what Joe was doing and watch what Joe's opponent was doing. So at the time, it really was the best thing for me, because even though I was a regular character on ICW, I don't think I was ready to be a wrestler in ICW yet. So it helped so much that before I turned into Leyton Buzzard the wrestler, I was already this character, and I got to learn from Joe, and I got to grow, and I got to carry on my training in the ring, and I got to carry on my training in the gym. So eventually, when the time came for me to transition from the comedy character to the wrestler, I'd learned so much already. And Joe was, a huge part of that, just to be ringside and watch his matches and how he does it. It really did help me so much.
Was there any match that stands out where you, again, became the fan and you was just in awe of that match?
Every time Joe Hendry wrestled Andy Wilde, they always had great matches. I think they just had great chemistry. They had a few matches. I don't think they ever had any matches on like the bigger shows, but they had a few like Fight Club matches, and we did a few tag matches as well. But I just thought, I always thought Joe and Andy just worked great together. And like I said, definitely the fan in me when I was at ringside watching these matches, I was like, oh, this is awesome.
So how does it feel so early in your career, especially with a company the size of ICW, the history Joe Hendry has in that company, and you beat him at Shug's house party with the career on the line? Like, to be given that moment, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it really was amazing. Yeah, so the stipulation was if I win, Joe leaves ICW forever, and if Joe wins, then I had to wear this mask until Fear and Loathing. So it was like big stakes. We'd had this great build to the feud before. We'd been in big brawls before, and we'd been doing promo battles and all this, and just leading up to it, I really didn't know what was going to happen. But obviously found out that's going to be Joe's last match in ICW, and we just went all out. I couldn't have asked for a better match. My mom was in the front row watching. She'd come up from Bristol to watch me. And me and Joe wrestled for, I think, nearly 20 minutes, and we just, everything under the sun. We were hitting each other with everything. And I think we told this for such a lot, for a 2-year storyline in my head. I built it up so much. I really wanted this match to deliver a fitting ending to what had been a 2-year storyline. So when I came backstage and I got to look online and got to find out that everyone did think that, everyone thought that the match really had paid the story justice and really was a fitting ending, and people saying, oh, it's one of the best matches of the weekend and all that. That really meant a lot to me, because that match, that story had been like my heart and soul for 2 years. So to see that the fans enjoyed it as much as I did was an amazing feeling.
Yeah, but what was the reception like backstage when you're walking back through that curtain after the win?
Oh, it was great. Everyone was all my friends were waiting for me. Obviously, Ravy Davey, my best mate, he was there waiting for me. Red Lightning, Rudo, he was there waiting for me as well, just to say well done and all that. And it was great. Me and Joe had a really good talk. I saw my friends. So my friends had come. I got to see them and see my family. So it was just, I was just on such a sort of euphoric high, after like this 2 years putting everything into this, and it paid off, and it paid off so well. I just felt great, and it was a great atmosphere that whole weekend. So it was amazing.
Yeah, but so let's go on to night 2 then.
Yeah.
So you had that match with Joe Hendry where people are saying one of the best matches of the weekend. Then you go have another one of the best matches of the weekend against the Cowboy James Storm. Like,
yeah.
Talk about that experience. Like, it's one thing, like, standing across the ring of people that you're working with very closely and somewhat idolized, but then you've got that big international star coming in, and Storm's done it all. And there you are, opposite him in the ring, Shug's house party, and you absolutely knock out the park again. What was that like?
Oh, I mean, that was crazy. Like, I grew up, so I used to watch SmackDown on Sky One every Saturday morning, but then when that stopped, my only wrestling I could watch was TNA on Challenge.
Same.
Yeah. So I was every episode of TNA on Challenge, man. So I grew up, watching James Storm. Crazy. So to even think that I'd be standing across the ring, from him in a match was, let alone beating him, was incredible. But a lot of people don't know the story of that weekend. So I wrestled Joe that the Saturday, and me versus James Storm wasn't a match that was supposed to happen. It was just, and I'd gone out that night as you do when you have the biggest night of your life, with my family and my friends, and I maybe had a few drinks too many. And the next day, I'm getting ready to go to the show just to watch it. It's because my mum and like I said, my mum and my auntie were up, so they were up already. So I said, well, why don't we just go along? We can stand up on the balcony, and we'll watch the show together. And then I get the call, and they say, hey, I was actually ringing up to say, hey, can I get a couple of guesties for my mum and my auntie? And they said, yeah, sure. Also, can you wrestle James Storm? And I was like, I mean, yeah, of course, And I was on my way to meet my mum to have some lunch with them before the show. And I was like, listen, Mum, I'm gonna have to cancel lunch. I can't tell you why. Just come to the show, and I'll see you later on, okay? So I didn't tell her anything. So that already, it was like the whole lead up to it was insane. Like my head's just going, after that phone call, like within half an hour, I was at Shug's house party and like at the venue, getting ready, getting changed and stuff. So it was really crazy. But and also like the year before, we had this interaction, me and James Storm, where I came to save my friend Davey, and James Storm powerbombed me onto the tacks. So already there was, like I said, I'm a sucker for a story. Already there's this story that last year he powerbombed me onto the tacks, and now this year we're gonna have this big match. So to find out that was really happening, and to have Dallas introduce me the way he introduced me as well, it was really cool. I think the crowd as well. I think my pop from the second night was maybe even bigger than the first night, because the first night people knew it was happening. They already knew it was me versus Joe Hendry. Whereas this night they didn't know what was happening, so they're like, "Oh, what's going on here?" So when he announced me and I came out, like the crowd went crazy. And just standing across the ring from James, he's such a great performer. So to stand across the ring from him, and we had another great match. We both put everything into it. I was so happy with that match. Grado got involved as well, and like I said earlier, like one of the key reasons I found out about ICW is through watching the British Wrestler. So for me to be able to like dance with Grado and do the like a prayer in front of mum and all that to me that was almost as big as wrestling James Storm was, getting to dance with Grado at the end. So what just such a surreal weekend, and such an incredible way to top it off. Really probably is the best weekend of my life, and it's just so hard to explain, especially when I thought after the first night it was over, and then little did I know that it was going to get even crazier. But night one and night two, it was just a weekend I'll never forget.
Yeah, but like again, you mentioned James Storm was somebody you'd watched on TNA, and if you was a TNA fan, then you was definitely a James Storm fan.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he was such an integral part of that company. What was the feedback you got from Storm after that match then? Because from what I heard, he was really happy with that match and with your performance.
Yeah, I mean, we had a good talk afterwards. Like I said, me and James knew each other before because he'd done ICW. And we've done other shows together as well. I remember we did IPW together down in Milton Keynes. So we were sort of on good terms already. We'd always, be out for a couple of beers after the shows and that. So he was a good guy. And yeah, it was a great reaction to the match. I really felt like he enjoyed the match just as much as I did. And the whole involvement with Grado as well was so much fun. And then like after, so we said our byes, and I just said to him, thanks so much for that, because it really was amazing. And he reciprocated and said it was great fun. And then afterwards, I was getting back home, and I opened up my Twitter, and it was like James Storm tagged you in a tweet, and he put out a tweet to say, everyone watch out for this guy. He's going to be one of the future stars of this industry. So for me, that was amazing. To have the match is one thing, but to then have the approval from James Storm, and for him to publicly put that out and say, hey, this guy's great, that was a really cool thing to see, and I definitely really appreciated it.
Yeah, 2019 was a huge year for yourself. Obviously, I believe before that weekend you started working more for other companies other than just ICW, and you became the SWA X-Champion. Talk about that. Like, what was it like first working for SWA? I know you may know quite a lot of the guys because of ICW, but it's a new company, new way of working, new audience. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, the SWA shows are always great. Like, I remember the first one I did was it was the Ryback weekend. So Ryback was over and he was on the show. He actually had some great matches. I remember he had a match against Grader, and he Ryback hit a super kick and did a dive and stuff. It was crazy. But I remember those shows drew like over 1,000. The Paisley one was like nearly 1,000 people, and I was like, this is crazy, to be a part of, and like a different type of fun to ICW. When you're wrestling at ICW, you're wrestling in front of adults and smarter fans.
Yeah.
Whereas if SWA, a company like that, you're wrestling in front of kids and you're wrestling in front of families. So it's a different type of fun. So that was awesome. And then, to win my first championship as well, like that's something you dream about from when you're a little kid, is like holding a real championship. So to win that in front of a packed out crowd and to, hold this title in my hand and to look at it, I was like, right, this is I'm really starting to get somewhere now. So that was definitely a really cool moment for me.
Yeah. Am I right in thinking on your debut then you'd have been teaming with Lionheart?
My debut match was actually supposed to be me and Red Lightning in a singles match, but there was actually a scare earlier on in the show. So one of the boys got hurt in a match. It was Robbie Wisher, Solar. He got hurt. It wasn't too bad. I think he took a nasty bump, and they thought it could have been a concussion. So it was a protocol is to not move them. So then the ambulance came, so the show was pushed back a bit. So to make up for time, it was also supposed to be Lionheart versus Jester. To make up for time, we did it as a tag match instead. So we ended up doing this match, and it was me and Lionheart versus Jester and Red Lightning. And we had so much fun, like obviously the crowd were a bit down because of everything that had happened. It was a pretty scary experience. Luckily he was okay, and everything was sorted out. But yeah, the crowd were right down to this. So when we came back after the interval, we did this match, and it was absolutely crazy, and it brought the crowd right back up. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And yeah, that would have been my actual debut. I'd done appearances for them before, speaking roles, but that was my first actual official match. And also last time I was in the ring with Lionheart, I believe. So definitely one I won't forget.
Yeah, what was it like working with Lionheart? Obviously, I was a fan of his through the PCW time. I went to the company when he was like champion and things like that. And then obviously he ended up becoming ICW World Champion, and it was such a wholesome, and obviously mental health, it's something that needs to be taken a lot more seriously. But what was your experiences like with Lionheart?
I always love working with him. I think we wrestled in singles twice maybe, and then we had that tag match as well. Unfortunately, none of the matches were on film, which is something which sucks. I'm not getting any footage of us wrestling. But we all had such a great time when I did. And I remember the first time I got in there with him was when I really knew. I was like, wow, I've got to step up my game. Because he's when you wrestle with him, he's so flawless, and he's got a great mind for planning matches and putting stuff together. So I remember the first time I wrestled him, I came back and I was like, wow, this is the level I want to be on. He was a main event player, that's what he knew how to do was wrestle big matches. So it was always a pleasure to be in the ring with him.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And again, so you've had that SWA X-Champion, you had the experience working with them, and then you get the call. ICW Zero-G, you become their champion. What was the list of their champions is the names on there are fantastic, and then you've just added yourself on that. So let's talk about your time as champ. How was that came to be? What was your reaction when you got told that was happening?
Well, 2019 had already been, just a ridiculous year for me. I'd had the Joe Hendry match, I'd had the James Storm match, so already 2019 was insane. And I didn't think I'd be getting anything like that in 2019. I thought, hopefully down the line, but it was still early days. But after that, I went on to have a string of matches after Shugs, and the crowds, the reactions were just getting louder and louder. And then I found out, we were going to do it on this show, and it was the last ICW show of the year. And it was. So I had two matches that night. The first match was a number one contendership match to face Liam at the Square Go. Because me and Liam had already had this match at the first main event at Gonzo. Well, one of my favorite matches ever. Me and Liam wrestled for over half an hour. It was crazy. So we'd already had this match. So I had this number one contendership match, and the winner gets to wrestle him at the Square Go. And Liam was also doing a open challenge that night. So I'd won my match earlier on in the night to be number one contender. So no one's expecting me to be the, the open challenge, because I've already got a shot at the championship. Why would I be the open challenge? So I remember I'd wrestled that match, and I just remember thinking, this is going to be such a cool reaction. And yeah, when I came out, the crowd went nuts. Me and Liam had this amazing match, and I won the title. And people it's such a good moment for me, because I find that unpredictability is such a hard thing to find in wrestling anymore. And I think not one person in the building knew that was going to happen tonight. There was not even one person had an idea. There wasn't anyone there that thought, Leyton Buzzard is going to come out and he's going to win the Zero-G Championship. So to win it so unexpectedly was awesome, because I've watched that clip back so many times when I actually 1, 2, 3, I win the title, and there's such this authentic reaction from the crowd, and they just go so crazy, and I felt like they'd been on this incredible journey with me over the last 2 years. So I think it was a payoff for them as much as it was a payoff for me. So to celebrate it with them, it was a really, really cool moment for me. And like I said, it was the last show of 2019. So to what had already been such a stellar year for me, to close it out as Zero-G champion, which when I moved to Glasgow, that was my goal. Like my long-term goal was like, I want to be ICW Zero-G champion, because I'd watched the matches like Kenny versus Noam and stuff like that. And I was like, this is what I want to do. So to close out 2019 as the champ, it was truly incredible.
Yeah, you mentioned Kenny there. That was somebody you did get a title defense on. So
yeah,
what was that like then, working with Kenny for the Zero-G Championship, when that was somebody, again, you looked up to and was one of the reasons why you wanted to hold that championship in the first place?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was great. Like I started off the first year, so started off 2020, oblivious as to what type of year it would turn into, thinking this is going to be the best year yet, And then, I found out me and Kenny were going to do this match, and I thought it was so cool, because I thought it was a good story, because, Kenny was very much, for years before, was the poster boy of the Zero-G division, I think he's got the record for most reigns.
Yeah.
So you really, Kenny, when you thought the Zero-G division, you thought of Kenny Williams. And I was very much sort of like the new face of the division. So I thought that was a great story, because it was like the old versus the new, and you're coming together to have this big match. And it was at Gonzo as well, which was cool, because the first Gonzo I main evented was wrestling for the Zero-G Championship, and now I'm main eventing it, defending the Zero-G Championship. So that was awesome. Me and Kenny I really enjoyed the match. He really enjoyed the match. All the fans really enjoyed the match. And that was, a really cool experience. And like I said, a great little story as well. And I think if I was going to defend it against anyone, Kenny was definitely one of the top options. And I think it worked out really well.
Yeah. So obviously you ended up losing it again back to Liam. ICW, you faced Johnny Storm. What was that like, working with British legends such as Johnny?
Oh, I mean, Johnny was great. So I've already worked with Jody before that. I had a triple threat the year before that with Jody and Ricky Knight Jr. And Jody's amazing. I'd already known him before that, because he'd be on most of the ICW shows. I'd always chat to Jody, because if anyone knows him, he's a great guy, just behind the scenes as well. Such a great guy to talk to, such a nice, friendly guy. So I'd already worked with him. And, you can't really talk about Jody Fleisch without talking about Johnny Storm, and vice versa. Like when you talk about British legends, these are two people you talk about that paved the way for people going over to wrestle in America. Like these guys were going and wrestling for CZW and, like 2000, so very much paved the way for people. So to find out that I was going to get to wrestle Johnny Storm as well, and it was going to be one-on-one, and I just turned heel as well, so it was like this new character I was sort of going for. It was awesome. We had a really fun match. We were opener as well, which is always my favorite. So if you're not on last, you want to be on first. And we had an awesome match. The crowd really enjoyed it. Everyone backstage really enjoyed it. And I came back and I thought to myself, that's pretty cool. I can say that I've wrestled Johnny Storm and Jody Fleisch, like two British legends who are still wrestling today. So definitely like a sort of like a British wrestling bucket list thing to do, is to say that you've wrestled Johnny Storm and Jody Fleisch. So that was a really fun match, and definitely something I look back on fondly.
Yeah, definitely. And then you mentioned it, the new character, so Captain. Where does that come from? Like, tell us about this character.
Yeah, I mean, so the entrance I came up with so before when I was with Joe, I already had the entrance where I come out in the black robe and I come out in the Venetian, masquerade mask. It was like an eyes wide shut sort of thing, because I've always loved the theatric side of things. I'm a big Japanese wrestling fan, so I love the extravagant entrances and the amazing entrance gear. But I thought that was a bit too heely, a bit too bad guyish. Was the the black satin robe and the mask. So I want to update it a bit. So like when I've been doing this storyline with Joe, I was doing stuff like jump in the barricades, and it was almost like, because Joe was with Dallas, who was the owner of ICW, it was like me versus ICW. So I felt like I was like an outlaw, So yeah. I was like, what's something cool I could do? And I was like, a pirate, like. And also where I come from, Bristol is a big pirate town. We've back in the day, and we've got the Bristol Rovers, my local football team. Yeah, who are the pirates? So I just thought it would be something great to do. For the entrance, so that I can update the entrance for the new character. And then I also thought, hey, the Captain, that's a great name. So I thought that'd be a really cool nickname, and it just came about from there, and it was just to me, it was like an updated persona of my already, I already had this big theatrical sort of animated character. But now I'm a good guy, so I wanted to sort of update it more to that. But yeah, the pirate, that came from sort of, at the time I was an outlaw, and also the history of pirates in Bristol, and the Bristol Rovers are the pirates. So it all came together, and the fans really liked it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to go to, before we get onto the stuff with the network, PCW Cruiserweight Champion. Again, here you are thinking 2020 is going to be one of the biggest years so far, and then you win the PCW Cruiserweight Championship on your debut. And I think you had one more match at Road to Glory, and then
a non-title match. Yeah. So I've never actually defended that title. I think I've held it for nearly 200 days, but I've not defended it once. But it was great. It was a really good. So we wrestled. They were having like a mini tournament for the Cruiserweight title, and I got the call. Obviously, Lionheart was a big part of PCW's history, and they knew that I was one of his sort of students. So they'd been meaning to get me down for a while, and it sort of all came together, and they said, we think this would be the perfect time for you to come down and do this tournament. And then everything went well, and it all happened. I ended up winning the championship my first night, which was crazy. A company that I've never wrestled before have enough faith in me to have me hold the championship on the first night was a truly incredible moment. And for me as well, because it was a place that was so close to Lionheart, it was a nice feeling as well. And I spoke on the microphone after, and I had a few words. But yeah, I was really looking forward to some really cool matches coming up. I think, funny you mentioned, I think one of the matches coming up was actually going to be me and Jody. But like I said, circumstances change. I had one match as champion, but it wasn't for the championship. It was it was at the tournament, and it was me versus this Canadian guy, Vaughn Vertigo. Great guy, great wrestler. And we had a really fun match. But yeah, I've not actually defended the championship yet. But I know a few companies have stripped everything of the championships, but as of now, I'm still PCW Cruiserweight Champion. And hopefully, when shows start running again, I can go back down and put in some more matches for the fans.
Well, Captain's like gold, so even if they strip it, you've got the gold at your house. Like nope.
Yeah, exactly.
This is playing into my character.
Exactly.
So obviously, the news came out that ICW was going to go on the WWE on-demand service, and nobody really knew what that was going to look like, whether it was going to be the full video library or if it was just going to be sporadic things, and it has been the sporadic shows. So how does that feel, the fact that Fear and Loathing, there you are with Dallas opening the show, and then you're actually wrestling on the network on the Fight Club show as well? Like, you're a WWE fan, and now you're on their network.
Yeah, I mean, it really was surreal. Especially because so the two shugs they put up, I was on them, but I was just sort of like ringside with Joe, and I was doing bits and bobs for him. But the Hydro one, that was cool because that's a big show, and we were literally opening, even though I wasn't wrestling on it, to go on the network and click on the show, and the first thing to do is me to walk out with Dallas and me and Kez, who's one of my best mates. So that was really cool to see. And then obviously to find out that I was actually wrestling on the WWE Network was just surreal, not something you think of that will happen. Not just as a wrestler, but as a fan, like 5 years ago, could anyone imagine independent wrestling companies being broadcast on the WWE Network? It's just not something you can think of. So to see ICW on the WWE Network, and to see ICW now have this bigger reach, and hopefully people from around the world who have never heard of ICW or never heard of Progress or WXW or all these different companies are going to get a chance now to watch this wrestling and to show the amount of passion that the wrestlers and the people behind the scenes have for the scene over here. It's really cool to know that it's going to have a wider audience, and also on a personal level to go on the network and see my name there. Yeah, it's a really cool thing, and I think it can only do good for the British wrestling scene, especially in this time we're in now, where I think once wrestling comes back, it's going to be a bit unwary, especially with COVID and all that. So to have this new exposure for these companies, I think it can only do good.
Yeah, definitely. Have you had any interaction or anything like that yet?
Sorry, what was that? I just missed that one.
Have you had any interaction with WWE in terms of maybe tryouts or NXT UK? Is that something that's on your next goal?
I mean, I've not had any interactions, no. But 100%. I mean, if any wrestler says WWE isn't or hasn't been a goal for them at some point in their life, they'd be lying. But it's definitely, obviously something I want to be involved in. And to see a lot of my friends and colleagues being able to get, especially people who've been working for so long in this scene, to get their shot, and to finally, some guys after working for like 15 years now getting their shot on the to work for WWE is really cool. So so far, I've just been focusing on what I'm doing, and I'm not trying to get too caught up with that. If it happens, it happens. But at the moment, I think everyone else is all these guys that have been around for a long time, they're getting their shot. But hopefully down the line, if I keep doing what I'm doing, I keep getting repetition, wrestling bigger names, wrestling for bigger companies, then I truly hope that it is something that will happen for me later on in my life.
Yeah, definitely. What other goals do you have in wrestling then?
Well, like I just said before, I'm a big Japanese wrestling fan. I have been since I was a sort of teenager. I really started getting into Japanese wrestling. But for me, I want to live and to train to wrestle in Japan. I want to, my goal in wrestling, I've got two goals. I want to be heavyweight champion of the world. And I want to be the best wrestler in the world. And I think to be the best wrestler in the world, you've got to go to Japan. I think all my favorite wrestlers are all wrestlers who have made a name for themselves in Japan, as well as in America, Mexico, and all around the world. So for me, that's really what I want to do. Is I want to be a traveled world wrestler and someone who's adapting every style of pro wrestling. And I think, especially whilst I'm young, I would love to train in Japan under the Young Lion training system, whether that be at New Japan or All Japan or Noah or DDT. There's so many great companies in Japan. But for me, hopefully within the next few years, that is my end goal for now anyway, is to live, train and wrestle in Japan.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it would be going over to Japan to do a couple of shows, or if you would prefer that Young Lion experience. If you got to choose out of the two, if it was, hey, we want to bring you over, maybe like a tour, or if it was, hey, we want to bring you over as a Young Lion, which one would you prefer?
For me, it would be the Young Lion. I think that level of training is just unparalleled to anywhere in the world. You know, like the amount of conditioning that's done and the strengthening, like the neck strengthening and stuff like that. They really train you to be like a super athlete. And that's what I want to. That's what I want to be. You know, I don't want to just be another guy. I want to be the best. And I think to do that, to train in that style of wrestling, you know, that King's Road, it's really incredible, and it's tried and tested. You know, like these guys in Japan are wrestling all out every night until they're like 60. You know, so they're clearly doing something right. So for me, it would be a dream come true to be able to wrestle in that style. And hopefully following the footsteps. You know, a lot of guys are in. Gabe Kidd, such a good guy and someone I enjoy watching so much. And was always, whenever I sort of spoke to him, he was always so nice backstage and all this. So to see him, what he's doing over there now, it's really a real inspiration for me. And I hope to definitely follow in someone like that, follow in their footsteps.
Hopefully that will be something that will happen probably like 2021, 2022.
I hope so, man.
Obviously COVID's just kind of made 2020 a wipeout essentially.
Yeah.
So where can people find you on social media? If you used to suggest any other match other than the Joe Hendry and James Storm one, what match of yours would you recommend them to go check out?
Well, you can find me on social media everywhere at Leyton Buzzard, Leyton Buzzard. Yeah, luckily I'm the only Leyton Buzzard in the world, so I don't have to put any like numbers or anything at the end of it. I mean, for me personally, any match of mine with Liam Thomson, he's always probably my favorite person to work in the ring with. We just have this, from the first match, we just had this natural chemistry. And every time we get in there, it's special, and it's special to the fans. So any of our matches. I also had a great match, one of my favorite matches at the start of 2020 this year, against TK Cooper, who's now back in New Zealand, and I think Australia maybe, and he's killing it over there. But we had a great match at the start of the year in January. It was my first defense as champion. It was TK's first match for ICW, so we both had something to prove. We just went all out for this match, and the fans really enjoyed it. So yeah, any match against Liam Thomson or my match with TK would be two that I'd suggest. But really, any of my matches, I think from Shugs onwards, I'm happy with all of them. I like to think that I put in the same amount of effort into every match.
Yeah. Is there anybody on that bucket list who you want to face when wrestling goes back to normal?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of people. I would love to wrestle Joe again. Like to how far I've come since then, not just like physically, but the amount of people I've wrestled, and especially to see what Joe's doing now. I'd love to do that. I'd love to do like a sort of a couple years later, me and Joe down the road. But I don't know, dream matches. Probably. Chris Jericho, man. Chris Jericho is my favorite wrestler of all time. So, in a dream world, if I could get to somehow wrestle Chris Jericho before he retires, that would be amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Leyton, thank you for coming on the show. Really excited to see what is next for you when wrestling goes back to normal. Like we've spoke about, 2019 was massive for you. 2020 was supposed to be even better, and then COVID happened. So we'll have to put that on pause.
Yeah, I've still got a couple things lined up for 2020. I can't say too much, but yeah, a couple of little debuts coming up. So 2020 is not over completely. We've still got a couple cool things happening, but 2021, that's going to be the year.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, take care, buddy, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks for having me on the show, mate.